PulseChain ecosystem 2025 and beyond. I know this is supposed to be a bit of a HEX-centric session that we're having over the last couple of days, but PulseChain was essentially built off of a need for HEX to survive and grow beyond where it was on Ethereum. So I think this all ties in nicely. But what I wanted to talk about was value drivers in a decentralized world. And hopefully if I can impart a little bit of my thoughts on that, we'll come away with a little bit more resiliency in the price of the dips and the troughs that we have to sometimes suffer in this space. So my big thing is value and price are not equal. So we spend so much time worrying about the price and we often forget about the value. So what I want to peel out in this session is, well, what value have we created in PulseChain and what does that mean for us? So like I said, value does not always equal price. Speculation can overshoot value, and we see this particularly in the crypto space. We see the speculation of the speculation of the value of something way overshoot its actual value and undershoot it as well. Hence why we have big bear markets. Ultimately, value is created over time, usually while you're busy worrying about the price. So let's have a look at what actually affects the value of something like PulseChain and HEX. So value versus price, and this is what I mean by we've got our purple line here of value, which is built over time. And we'll talk about what constitutes that value over time. But then what we spend our day-to-day on is the green line, which is price. And we're 1 minute we're above what value is, the next we're below. And I'll give you a good example of how that looked for Ethereum in the past and how it sort of looked for Pulse at the beginning when we launched as well. So if you were around for DeFi summer, that really popped off in the world of Ethereum, and price rocketed up. Didn't matter what project it was, if it had a DeFi label, price was through the roof. But that value, so prior to that, the price was really, really suppressed. We'd come out of a bear market, but all these DeFi protocols that were popping off, they didn't emerge overnight. They had been built over the course of the whole bear market. So teams were busy building all this stuff out, building the tech, and they were probably less worried about price. They were head down, bum up, focused on doing the code and bringing these projects to life. All this value getting generated, teams working on it, but the market wasn't ready for the growth in price to start to match that value that had been built in. So we'd come off the back of a solid bull market, price smashed down way lower than the value was worth. Value kept getting built, and then when we had our DeFi summer, the price caught up with value and then went straight through it. And we keep doing that time and time again in these markets. Pulse is probably a pretty good example of that. A lot of people sacrificed funds for Pulse. The expectation was pretty high when it launched. Everyone was pretty excited. We got a quick rally up in price, but the chain had just launched. So ultimately, the speculation got ahead of the value. We had to reset the price, and then we've had to rebuild. And what you probably don't realize is, for while everyone's been focused on a chart going down for the last year or so, there's been a lot of value built. And we haven't actually had the chance to reset our price to match the value that's been built. And I think that's what we're about to go through. So there's what I call the 3 M's that affect a lot of the projects in this space. So Moore's law, that's to do with the speed of processing chips and how fast they evolve. We're a technology-based industry, so the more compute power we have, the cheaper it is to run blockchains, the bigger they can get because we get more disk space. So as technology evolves, it's good for how fast and how quickly we can move data around on these blockchains. So that's a good underlying thing, but it doesn't sort of really translate into value. It's more deflationary because as things get faster, it's cheaper to do those tasks, but it does affect what we do. This is the big one, and we'll spend a bit more time talking about this, and this is Metcalfe's law. So this states that the value of a network is proportional to the square of the number of connected users, or what they call nodes. So in other words, as more people join a network, the network's value increases exponentially. But why? The analogy I like to use is if you go all the way back in time to when the first telephone was introduced. And what you probably had was one guy sitting on the end of a line on one telephone, and another guy could have been in the same city, another state, sitting on another end of the line. And that was two users or two nodes on that telecommunications network. That added a bit of value. So they could now, rather than the tyranny of distance and time to send snail mail or something like that across that distance, they could do that in real time on a phone. So that did actually add a lot of value, that network. But where it got really interesting was when we added another node and another node. So rather than just one-to-one direct communication, now 4 people could communicate with whoever they chose that was on there. And you can imagine as that gets more and more nodes on the network, it becomes a lot more valuable network, because now everyone can start communicating. And we take it for granted now. That's the world we live in. Everyone's got a little computer in their back pocket. They're all hyper connected. Very valuable networks, but they had to start somewhere. So that value had to grow over time as all the nodes connected to this very first telecommunications network. So that's how Metcalfe's law works. The more nodes you have on a connected network, the more value it is. That's why things like Meta, Facebook, they all blew up. And in actual fact, their highest growth periods in terms of value were before they even learned how to generate revenue. So when they were startups and all these nodes or all these users were joining into Meta, Facebook at the time, it was very hard for people to value it, but they just seen this mass amount of users connecting to this network, and they didn't even know how to monetize it. I don't know if you remember back in the day, but Facebook was essentially free. They had no clue how they were going to make money out of this thing. And for better or worse, the path that they ended up taking was, okay, we've got all these people on this network now. We've got their attention locked into it. We're going to monetize their attention. And how do they do that? Ads. So unfortunately, that's where we sort of sit in the current era of a lot of this technology. Is our attention, our time is essentially just abused for selling ads so that these companies can make revenue. Not my favorite way it's played out in terms of what we probably could have done as a society with these technologies, but that's where we sit. I hope we start to see a bit of a change of that as this next generation of social networks evolve, and then not so ad driven. So yeah, that's my hope, as we see a big improvement in that, because yeah, great technology, but probably not put to use greatly. And the last of the 3 M's is Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. No one's immune to Murphy's Law. And look, I'm being a little bit flippant, but hey, you can't control everything. You can have the best of intentions. And I'm sure when PulseChain was launched, everyone had expectations and intentions, and hey, the market's going to do what the market's going to do. So, but I think we've consolidated really, really well, and we're set to really build on a strong platform that has been worked on for a couple of years by a lot of people. And that's what I want to try and show you, is what has actually been going on in the background and where that value has accrued over that time while we've been worried about the price. Now, I think there's a little bit more to value creation in these networks than just Metcalfe's law. And I've sort of alluded to that, and that's human capital. So as humans, our one most valuable resource is our time. And where we choose to dedicate that time, it is important. You are actually injecting your time as value into where you spend that time. Okay, so Metcalfe's law is great. The hyper-connected nodes is definitely a thing that adds a lot of value. But if you've got a lot of these nodes, but no one ever jumps on to give their attention on these nodes, where's the value? So I think that is probably one of the most important things, is the human capital side of this. Let's have a bit of a look at Metcalfe's law and see what that could mean for PulseChain and ultimately HEX. The beauty of this space that we play in is every token has the ability to be a network. It is the amount of users that come in, there are more nodes on that token. So you can sort of treat PulseChain as the underlying infrastructure and the communications channel, but each token has that same sort of principle as Metcalfe's law. More people giving it attention and more people connected to it, more holders essentially of a token. So they all sort of play by that rule, but more so with sort of communication type networks, you really see that. But let's have a look how Metcalfe's law could work if we sort of try and apply it to PulseChain. So I've done these slides a while back. So this is a presentation I've done probably a good 6 months or so now ago, I think it was. It could have been a bit sooner. So some of these numbers will be a little bit out. So the starting conditions, when I took this snapshot, we had a market cap of 3.3 billion, and I'm pretty sure that was including OA, of course. Number of users, look, we've got to estimate that. So I look at wallets and I go, okay, maybe there's 200,000 wallets. Now, granted, that's not individual users. Users have multiple wallets and so forth. But for the purpose of this exercise, let's roll with that number. And the price per token of Pulse, when I done this, was, what's that? 4024. Obviously, we've gone up a little bit since then. So we take those numbers and we can calculate the constant K. So we have our starting market cap, the number of users. We're going to square that. You can see the calculations there, but ultimately end up with K, so our constant being 0.0825. I'm not going to go heavy on the maths, guys. I know people tune out when we start talking maths, but just follow this through and I'll simplify it on the next slide. So we then take K and we pump that into our equation with an expanded number of users on the network. So we take our new market cap will equal K times the number of new users squared. And if we said we go from 200,000 wallets to 1 million wallets, then our new market cap, multiplying all that out, could be 82.5 billion. That's based on Metcalfe's law. What we don't know is over what period of time that takes. You could have a massive growth period and the numbers rise up really quickly, or that could take a long, long time. Bitcoin's been around, 16 years? ETH, was it 10 years, maybe more now? So they've taken a long time to build up all their value, and they've gotten some crazy X's along the way because they've had plenty of time to build up the network, get more nodes and users, and build in more value. So what does that mean in simple terms? So if we've got our two cases here, we had our users, we started off with 200,000, we went up to 1 million, market cap was 3.3 billion, went to 82.5 billion, circulating supply remained consistent. Now, obviously that varies. Price per token went from 4024 up to 60 cents, being a 25,000x. Now, I don't want the takeaway from this to be Jexxa said we're going up 25,000x on PulseChain. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, this is an example of Metcalfe's law at work. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know whether we're going to get 1 million users or lose 1 million users. I don't know. These are unknowable things, and I don't know over what sort of time period. But what I wanted to show you was the power of Metcalfe's law when applied to these networking systems. And that's why, like I said, Facebook, Twitter, all those things, they rocket up in price hard because you get a tipping point where you keep building these users, and then the actual user base exponentially grows as well, which then makes the price exponentially grow even more. So they can move very, very quick if you get a good flow of new nodes or users to the network. All right, that's enough of the numbers. So I'll leave you in peace from that side of things. But let's have a look at the other side of the equation. So I talked about value being Metcalfe's law and the human capital side of things. So let's have a look what I mean by human capital and what's been injected into PulseChain over the last 2 years, which I don't think has been accounted for in the value of the network yet. So let's have a look at some of the things that constitute human capital. So we've had a lot of teams building projects. So that's capital that's getting injected into the network in terms of people are using their own money. Sometimes we're doing sacrifices, love them or hate them, but there's money getting injected into the network. We've got developers building, that's all their time. We've got a project management team around building a lot of these projects. We've got all the infrastructure that you have to bring to the network. So validators, nodes for RPCs, servers that host all the websites. That's all capital that is actually getting invested into the chain. And you don't see that happening in the background. But I can tell you now, some of the sites that you take for granted when you're want to see your portfolio, the guys behind the scenes running those servers are investing quite a lot of time, energy, and money to do that. That is their attention, their money getting added to the chain. Big K brought up something about some of the fun and games that happen on the chain and the controversy, and we see it all play out on X, and that's because we have a lot of sub communities. And that's because you've started off with a community that has gotten large enough to then fracture into sub communities. And whilst you sit there and go, these guys are on this side and these guys are on this side, and it looks like there's a big heated battle all the time on X, that is actually healthy. That is what a community looks like. Think about how the world operates around you. Not everyone agrees about everything. We form our groups in society every day. That's a normal functioning society as humans know it. So that's actually a healthy thing. And the more of these sub-communities we have, whether or not you're a part of one or not, they are actually healthy for the ecosystem. So next time you're about to sling a bit of shit on X, just have a think. But ultimately, they're all part of the same community as you, and you may not have the same views, but everyone's adding value. The other thing we see is real world goods and services. And this is really important. A lot of people don't get this with crypto. So the big thing I hear from most people when they look at Bitcoin, it's got no value. It doesn't do anything. There's nothing sitting behind it. And we've just talked about how valuable an actual network in of itself is because of Metcalfe's law and how efficient we can communicate. So they're obviously missing that point. But what they miss is these networks, as they get established, they are actually reaching out into the real world, and they're dragging in real world resources all the time. And it could be something as simple, you pay for your goods with crypto, or someone goes and generates a real world life product, clothing, merch. They make some mugs, some t-shirts. They're actually, that value and that time is actually getting drawn back into the network, because the network is not an island. It's now reaching out into what we call the real world, and it's attaching itself to things of value. So that value's got to ultimately be reflected in the chain that it's a part of. And that's what I think a lot of people don't see in these networks. They're struggling with the concept of this. They need to hold something physical for them to believe it has value, but they're not taking into account, I guess, the esoteric value of how this reaches out into the broader world. So we see a lot of that, and more services are generated because of that. Accountants have probably got more work. Lawyers have probably got more work. There's I work for an education company as well, teaching people how to do crypto. That's ultimately bringing value to this space and to this chain. You educate someone about the space, they then bring their attention, their dollars. So you can see how this reaches out into the broader world and starts to drag value back into the chain. And the last tier there is the attention economy. And this is what we really spoke about at the very beginning, which is all about your the Metcalfe's law side of things with Facebook and the like, is if you're giving your attention to this particular network, you are injecting probably the most valuable thing on the planet, which is your time. You're all sitting here now investing your time to watch me, to watch the other streamers. You're actually injecting that value back into the network. So what I think we take for granted is we don't see it holistically about all these things that are getting injected into the chain because we're too busy worrying about what the price is doing. But ultimately, the price will sort itself out if all these things are still happening, communities are growing, teams are building, more real-world services, more attention. As all that gets added, price will eventually catch up with it. It's bound to. Okay, so that's the value creation side of things. What really excites me about this space in general, but more so in particular with PulseChain, is more of the base of a new economic foundation we're building. So I think we can all agree governments don't spend money the best way they should. There's a whole bunch of middlemen that are inserted into all our payment rails we know at the moment. So traditionally, we've got banks using Visa, Swift. We've got our reserve currency being dollars. So these are all the foundations of a good economic network. We need exchanges and online shops, and ultimately we need some sort of savings account, which most people in the traditional world is using gold. But we've got the chance to actually build an alternate version of that with some of the views and principles that we would like to see rather than the views and principles that are forced upon us. And while most people come into this space for price go up initially, eventually, if they delve deep enough, they end up staying for the principles and what it can possibly mean for their future and their children's future. That's why I'm here. That's why I got involved in crypto to begin with, and why I like in particular what's happening on PulseChain, because we seem to be doing things in a way that gets rid of the most middlemen. Hopefully, if we see a privacy protocol come on PulseChain that is used widely, that is the most beautiful thing I could see happen. That's the one thing I want to see happen on this chain is privacy just be native to it. That would be absolutely awesome. But in the meantime, we've built out some really cool stuff on PulseChain. And I'll reflect on something Richard's said, and I don't know if people truly grasp what he means when he says this. He keeps saying, because everyone's bitching and moaning, the block explorer is not good, or this is not good, or we need this. And what he's telling you is we have everything we need to be successful. We already have everything we need to be successful. The rest is cake decoration. Great to have, but it doesn't materially matter if your goal is improve your wealth and your relationship with money and how you can interact with it. So what I want to show you now is why I think he's saying that and what people are missing. You can bitch and moan all you like about block explorers. At the end of the day, I don't think it matters when you've got the building blocks already in place. Okay, so let's have a look what we've got sitting on PulseChain that matches up with TradFi world and what we already have. And these have already been released. So we have the actual underlying network, the payment rails, the infrastructure to transmit the ones and zeros and make sure the whole system works. We've got that in PulseChain. We've got the reserve currency that pins on that, which is Pulse. So that's the oil that fuels that underlying network, and that's how we pay our gas fees. That is essentially the reserve currency where things are tied to in liquidity pools and things like that. But it's the oil that allows us to do those transactions. We've got somewhere an ability to trade. Now, granted, that's not the same as going down to a merchant and buying a cup of milk, but you need some way to be able to exchange. Now, what you exchange your funds into, well, that's where all the sub-communities come into it. But we've got some means of exchange there. If you want to swap your reserve currency into a savings tool like HEX, you've got the ability to be able to do that. And that's the final piece of the puzzle, is the wealth preservation, so savings side of things. And although we've seen price action be pretty brutal in HEX, just because of the general market, it's not just HEX alone. We've seen all blue chips, Cardano, everyone's been beaten to shit over the bear market price-wise. And the reality is people that are down 90% are looking over the fence saying, oh, these guys are down 92%. We're better than them. Like, everyone got brutalized over the bear market. That will change. But what we've got here is the core of what I think can be a change to good financial freedom. And like I said, the only thing I think we're missing is the privacy aspect. Now, I know there are some privacy tools on the chain, but I just don't think they're widely used. If we get something that is widely used, then that is the ultimate for me. That would be the stack complete, where we've got the rails, we've got the reserve currency, we've got a method of exchange, we've got our savings tool, and then if we can then transact privately, that is awesome. So I think that's what he's driving at when he says you've got everything you need. Yeah. Now all the rest is just us having fun and having games and creating meme coins, and but I don't want to take away from what a lot of the other teams have built, because there's been some awesome products and projects that have been built, which will get a lot of use down the track. We've got lending protocols, we've got a lot of the stuff built on HEX that you've seen. We've got like a whole system which acts like bonds for HEX in the actuator protocol. So there are so many cool tools that are being built out. Ultimately not necessary, but will be very well received when price ticks up and we get a chance to use all these really cool tools. So let's have a look at, and this will be sort of where I finish up. Let's have a look at the human capital and the value that has been injected into this chain. So this is Frank White's ecosystem map, and I refer to this quite a lot. I think he's done a really good job. It's probably grown a lot since I took this screen grab, and you can see he goes through and he itemizes all the different sectors and tools that are being created on PulseChain. But what you can't see is half of those lists have a little thing down the bottom where he's truncated the list, and if you click on it, it expands out probably another whole length the same with more projects. So there's probably double the amount of projects that you can see on that screen grab. That's all human capital, time, effort, energy, money that has been injected into this chain over the last 2 years. I personally know of so many things that are still getting built that people wouldn't even know about, because as builders, we talk about things in back channels when we're communicating on how we can work together on various projects. And I know there's still a raft of things that haven't even hit the market yet that are still to come. So don't take for granted all the building that has actually happened in the background over the last 2 years while you have been worried about the price. It will all catch up in the end. So yeah, some closing thoughts. Value creation is built over time. So you've just got to let the cycle play out. And we've got the broader cycle, but we've also got what's happening in PulseChain as well. We have our mini cycle within that broader cycle. Value creation usually precedes price appreciation. So like I said, value being built over the last 2 years has not been priced in. We will see that happen. Speculation will always oscillate around value creation. That's that chart I showed you at the beginning, where you can have a smooth run up of value creation over time as we add users and add more projects and value, but price will oscillate around that. So yeah, there's a global network of people working together to make PulseChain valuable. I see that every day. Like it amazes me. So if you know me, you know that I run a lot of validators on the network with the vouch protocol. I speak to people in every single continent that are running validators on PulseChain. It is truly a global network, and it amazes me what we've been able to create here. That's it for me. Hopefully you found a little bit of value in that, and you've got a new perspective on how much value is being built into PulseChain and where this can possibly go for Pulse and for HEX.
Awesome stuff, man. Really, really like to see you go through all those pieces, and there's so much to it. What is, maybe I'll ask you this too, like what is the most, we've seen a lot of things heating up here for around PulseChain and hopefully for HEX as well. Like, what do you see us go in the next few weeks, few months? I mean, is this time, is it actually going to kick off? Like, we've been holding our breath for a while now. Do you think this is the time for the glory run?
What was really nice to see was in this recent kick up, we hit a key level, which was around the key levels, I think about so was it 4044. And every time we've hit that, we've felt a bit of resistance. We hit that, pushed up just marginally. We got through it at, what is it, 4 zeros and a 5. But that was actually a really key level. And what was more impressive was when ETH dumped the other day, we didn't cascade down along with that. So that was actually really good. That showed a bit of strength there. So hopefully if we see ETH, it's testing its support now on its recent breakthrough. If ETH pushes up, hopefully we get the follow through on PulseChain. But I feel like we're definitely on the right, we're heading in the right direction. How long it's going to take will be, I guess, we're at the whims of the market a little bit with that as well. But I think we're heading in the right direction for now. And yeah, I think the psychological barriers, the SAC price, once you get through that, the lid will come off it for sure. And I think we're building the structure we need to do that. So yeah, I'm pretty positive on it.
I imagine once we get past SAC price, it'll, all the new people come in who have no idea what a SAC is or a SAC price is. They'll, hopefully see the value in PulseChain.
Yeah, no, we've had to grind up a little bit, but that's the way charts have got to work. If it just shoots up, no one will. Yeah, it won't be respected. You've got to build the structure, and there's no cheats way of doing it. We all want a massive God candle, but sometimes you got to do it the long road.
Well, let me ask you on Vouch real quick too. What are you seeing on the validator side? Like, what is there anything bullish or anything interesting happening? I know we got around 50,000 validators or so now, give or take. A lot of them, some of them are staked. The liquid protocols delegated, all that stuff. Some of them are the native ones out there. What is anything interesting in that realm before we wrap up?
Anything interesting? Like I said, it's good to see. It is quite a broad group of people that are doing that. I thought it was very US centric and would have been sort of mostly based there. But I've been amazed. Like I've spoken to guys in Italy, Vietnam. Like there's people running these nodes everywhere, man. It's awesome to see. So that gives me I just didn't expect that when I was part of the community. So it's good to see that we've reached out to all corners of the globe. I think that's probably one of the most positive things I've seen is this is truly global. And I've heard someone saying the other day, oh, Richard runs most of the nodes. It's actually not true at all. It's the community doing all this. There's a lot of people doing a lot of hard work in the background running all these nodes. So yeah, I've built a whole ecosystem around the validating side of things. So I'm really positive about it. You wouldn't do those things, or I wouldn't do those things if I didn't see a future for PulseChain beyond the excitement of one cycle. So for me, I'm being serious. When I showed that slide about building your financial future, I want to have a part in shaping that. So that's why I'm investing so much of my time, energy, and money into doing all that sort of stuff. I truly believe we've got something great to work with here.